This is the starting lineup. Here's your host, Karl Schoening.
Welcome into the starting lineup. I'm Karl Schoening, starting at your host and the voice coming through your speakers. Two-man starting lineup as usual as we start this new week of shows. LG starting at the audio technician. Hope you're having a good Sunday night, or if you're watching on YouTube stream, that is. Happy Monday if you're listening to us on the radio on Ticket 760. And a lot has happened since we were last on air on Friday. The Rocket season mercifully came to an end. Two teams completed 3-1 comebacks. The general public cared about horse racing for a couple of hours this weekend. SAFC picked up a point, and the second round of the NBA playoffs is set. That's where we start because we're in San Antonio, Texas. And game one between the Spurs and the Timberwolves tips off at 8:30 Central tonight at the Frost Bank Center. And our basketball addiction can be fed again tonight, Spurs fans. It's been a long week, LG, without Spurs basketball.
It's been a long week, man. I don't remember the last time we went this long without Spurs basketball before last offseason.
Well, at least the play-in tournament, right? Because I was thinking about that today because the Spurs finished that on a Sunday, and then they finished it was April 12th on a Sunday. I should pull up a calendar and look at it, but then they played again on the 15th, or the 18th rather. That's when the Blazers series started, if I'm not mistaken. I should have done a little more prep work if I was going to lead in with that.
Yeah.
But it has been a long break. They finished the series on Tuesday, and here it is on Monday. So not quite a week off for the Spurs. And it seems to be the Thursday night was when the Timberwolves beat the Nuggets, so they are getting the weekend off, and they have a travel day in there. So the Spurs should be well rested and ready to go tonight.
Ready to go. Hopefully they're not rusty. You know, too many days off, you might get a little bit out of your game, or they might just be laser focused on their game plan against the T-Wolves.
Very, very good point that you bring me up to right here, because that was the Spurs' issue last year. Was sometimes they weren't ready to play games, sometimes they didn't play 48 minutes, and sometimes they didn't know how to close games. None of those issues apply to this year's San Antonio Spurs team. They're going to come out laser focused. Anthony Edwards is listed as questionable in the initial.
Upgraded to questionable.
Yes, yeah. So that's worth noting because he was originally expected to be out games 1 and 2, and I want to touch on that in a second, but because that is probably the biggest headline heading into this game is when will Anthony Edwards play if he plays in this series in San Antonio. My real guess is there's no harm in listing him as questionable and he's on the bench in a jersey because they already have Dante DiVincenzo out. I'm looking at the injury report right now, officially sent in, and Ayo Dosunmu is also questionable with his right calf that kept him out of Game 6. So if you just put both of those guys as questionable and then the game time comes around, they say they can play, they say they can't play, no harm, no foul. But if you list them as out in this initial injury report, I'm pretty certain they can't really be upgraded because this comes into just the general, strategy of the injury reports. And that I'll have to double check the rules on that one, but I've never seen someone out on a report upgraded. It seems to be a pretty definitive, this guy is or isn't playing, that the league needs to know for player participation rules.
That's true. And the Spurs do have a shoot-around scheduled for tomorrow morning, so hopefully they have a game plan for both. You know, if Ant-Man shows up, you need a game plan for that. If he doesn't, you need a game plan for that. So you can just pull whatever you need out of the bag.
It's the beauty of having almost a week off. Is 6 days to scout. You got to watch Game 6, and you probably got to see everything cut up by your advanced scouts. If you wanted to watch the game all the way through while you're eating dinner with the team, you could. There's plenty of things that happen. It would be really cool to be behind the scenes to the point to just hear how these great basketball minds and players interact in a 7-game series. I got to see it a few times in, Spurs championship videos, and how Manu was talking about how, hey, we can't really defend this guy this way. Yeah. And Manu's obviously one of those guys that it really was a basketball mind and saw the game creatively. So he would probably be an exception to this rule to where it would be even more valuable to hear what he thinks. But Yeah, it's interesting. Those are the questions I'd really like to know is like, what are you guys talking about that you can't tell us? I can't ask the questions that I know I'm going to get shut down on. It's like, oh, that's internal conversation. It's like, yeah, no,
Exactly.
I get it.
You don't want to let your secrets out of the bag before the game even happens. Let it show up on the court. I'm sure Mitch Johnson has a lot of stuff planned, and I'm sure Greg Popovich is whispering in his ear as well.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot more experience in the Spurs organization than the inexperience people keep referencing to the Spurs roster of young players. Yeah, the Spurs have 3 of the best players under the age of 23. It's pretty nice. But the growing pains with that, if you will, is we have to go through these conversations of, is experience important? Being healthy is important. The Spurs are right now healthier than the Minnesota Timberwolves. However, there is somebody to note on the Spurs injury report. Carter Bryant is questionable with a right foot sprain. So hopefully he is okay. And once again, there's no harm in putting him as questionable and then listing him as out later. But he's certainly somebody that I expect big things from when he gets in, because he's a very elite athlete that just makes plays through his athleticism and an effort.
Yeah, you mentioned this team being super young. One thing we probably won't see on the injury report for at least the rest of this season and maybe next is, Tim Duncan out old.
Yeah. No, the vets on this team, the oldest one that actually plays is Harrison Barnes, and I'm pretty sure he's 33.
So maybe we might see an old on there. Harrison Barnes old.
No. In fact, the kids are calling it Unk. He's Unk status.
They're calling De'Aaron Fox Unk, and he's not even 30 yet.
He's 28. He's 28.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, and that was a funny joke that people caught on with when they see him. Is that sort of going to be your new nickname just because you didn't want it to be your nickname? Now he becomes Unk, but.
So he's not the second oldest. Plumlee would be the second oldest, I think.
I'm talking about guys that play.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Bismack Biyombo's probably 37 himself, because he was in the draft in, I think, 2011. So he's up there, and I don't know his age off the top of my head, but yeah, Bismack's probably the oldest player on the team. At least he feels like the oldest soul. I wouldn't be surprised if
he's 33. He's the same age as Harrison Barnes. Plumlee's 36.
Okay, no, I knew Plumlee was up there. In fact, yeah, I guess Plumlee. It's funny to try and remember when you first encountered these guys that have definitely been in your sports watching lives for over 10 years at this point. I remember talking about Bismack Biyombo and his 7'7" wingspan and how he was just going to be a stellar defensive player, and he was. And now I think he brings a lot more veteran leadership than he does to the court. So Harrison Barnes, you have the roster up there, is the oldest rotation player.
Yes.
And then is there anyone under 30 that plays significant minutes? I don't think so.
No.
Julian Champagnie, Devin Vassell, they're both pretty young. I think they're 25 and 25. Maybe, let's see. Julian Champagnie went undrafted in 23, so he's not that old.
Everyone who actually plays significant minutes is under 30 or at 30. Luke Cornett is 30, so he's right on the cusp.
That's right. Yeah, Luke is in his I guess early 30s. He spent those years with Westchester in the Knicks, so I got to see him once or twice. But he in the G League, I should say. Yep. But yeah, well, that's the beauty of the Spurs, but it's also the modern NBA is everybody's young. So if you pull up the Minnesota Timberwolves roster, they do have some vets that you've heard of, such as Julius Randle, mostly known for his time with the Knicks. He was on some Kobe Laker teams. That's how far back Julius Randle goes in the basketball world. He's actually the most interesting mismatch opportunity for the Spurs to figure out. Who starts on Julius Randle? That's sort of my idea of where does the defense start, especially with the players expected to play. And I would say Julius Randle is the guy that, do you maybe start Luke Cornett to guard Rudy Gobert and let Wemby start on Julius Randle? I think that's a fair enough thought and conversation to have. Maybe it's something you look at in the play of the game when Randle and Gobert are playing on the court sometime in other shifts, and you stay with your lineup that starts hot with shooters such as Champagnie, because you got to remove Vassell or Champagnie, and I think the Spurs find a little bit more value having a three-point shooter instead of Luke Cornett out there, who's really a bit more of a connective player and rebounder. But this does pose a very old-school matchup with a very traditional, not going to shoot anything further than 12 feet Rudy Gobert,
yep,
and a power forward in Julius Randle, who if you let him shoot a three, he's really not taking advantage of his offensive skills, and you kind of let him shoot a three. So the front court battle is interesting here. I think the Spurs can win it, but they might need to change up their lineup at times from what they've had out there because there wasn't much French vanilla in the series against the Blazers.
Yeah, so going back to age, Gobert is 33 years old, and Julius Randle is 31. And the oldest man that'll probably see some minutes on the court, you know who that is for the Minnesota Timberwolves?
Mike Conley, right?
Exactly. Yeah. 38 years old, Mr. Mike Conley.
Mike Conley, wasn't he in the 07 draft?
Drafted by Memphis?
Yeah, he was drafted by Memphis, and I remember him praying that he actually said, I pray I don't go to Atlanta. So that's an interesting spot note there. Is Mike Conley, he's a pro and he'll play, and Ayo Dosunmu, hopefully he plays because I like it when everybody plays in the NBA playoffs. But the Spurs, they're healthy, and it's banged up T-Wolves coming into town tonight here to face off against the Spurs. If you are watching in the future here on Ticket 760, we got to talk more Spurs for sure. We're going to talk Spurs almost nonstop on this show, probably tomorrow after the Spurs game. But we will definitely hit that at the top of the 7 o'clock hour. As coming up next here on the starting lineup, Philly makes me a profit. And I'm not talking about I want to bet. They made me profit in terms of I could see into the future. I called the 3-1 comeback.
Okay,
I want to break that one down for sure. There were game 7s on Sunday. Golden Tempo won the Kentucky Derby because people cared about horse racing for maybe 12 hours on Saturday. So I guess I want to give a little shout out to that one. A lot more coming up here. But LG, any final thoughts on the Spurs and the Timberwolves tonight? An 8:30 tip-off on WOAI. Myself and Dan Weiss get things started at 8 o'clock on Spurs Radio Game Night.
Yeah, my only final thought is if you do not have the Peacock app, you are going to wish you did.
Oh, no,
because
that's right.
The Spurs are not going to be on regular NBC. They will be on the NBC Sports Network, which isn't too widely available unless you have the Peacock app.
We need to get an official sports bar, LG. That's the only inclusion here, so we can actually say, hey, official watch party for the starting lineup. Go out to your name here. Hey, if you're listening and you want to say, hey, we will plug you to say, hey, don't give that $10 to a sponsor instead of give that $10 to the conglomerate that is NBC. That's smart on them. That's actually high key. I know fans are complaining, but NBC is probably going to get so many new subscribers, especially in the San Antonio and Minnesota areas. We'll talk about that and much more here on the starting lineup. When we come back, best 2 words in sports, Game 7. 2 of them yesterday.
make the team, but he's in our starting lineup. Back to Karl Schoening.
What's going on, y'all? I'm Karl Schoening here. This is the starting lineup on YouTube and Ticket 760. With me in the starting lineup today is LG. LG, there are so many ways people can get a hold of us. I'll start off by giving out my handle. I am On Air Karl on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to give me a follow, help out my stats, interact with the show, I will read your tweets if they are FCC appropriate.
Yes, sir. And you can follow the show at TSL760. You could also subscribe to this thing on YouTube at Starting Lineup Live. Those of you listening on my YouTube channel, head on over to Starting Lineup Live on YouTube and give us a subscription there. If you do chat in on that channel, I see you, Ed, up in there. Your chat will appear on the screen here for those watching on the stream.
Ed said something? Did you say hi? What do we got?
Yeah, he says, what's up, fellas? Ed's up in here. What up, Ed? Greg's up in here. He says, Barnes, 33 years old, plays like he's 37. Come on now.
Just because everybody else around him makes him look older than he is. He's still a pretty good athlete.
Go easy on Unk. He was Mr. 100% for most of the start of the season there.
But he does have two dunk contest competition players like Steph Castle and Carter Bryant that are kind of playing on the same wing as him.
He's competing for minutes, that's for sure.
I get the comment only because, yes, a 33-year-old kind of looks 37 next to Steph Castle and Carter Bryant. Imagine what I look like.
Yep, and Greg also says, good luck tomorrow, LG, working the game. Yes, I am working the game. Thanks for the good luck. And he says, Karl on the dial, pregame and halftime and postgame.
Yes, sir.
The dial meaning 1200 WOAI AM, home of the Spurs.
Yeah, and unfortunately, for those of you that listen on the iHeart app, I don't believe it is available unless you live 75 miles within our like, I guess, designated, this is San Antonio, and that might not even be right. You can listen on the Spurs app, and I believe that rule does come into effect. So if you're someone who's listening in Austin, you might not be able to get us on the Spurs app. That's worth double checking. And if all else fails, there is the NBA Audio League Pass. It's $11 for the year, but I don't think they ever prorated it for the playoffs. I should write somebody and say, hey, make it $3 for the playoffs. That should help.
They should give us a discount for that. And last time I said NBC Peacock app had a 7-day free trial. Well, that conveniently ended before the playoffs start. So there's no longer a free trial there, but it is, I believe it's only like $12 for the ad-free version. So hop on there if you need to watch the Spurs. If not, go to your favorite establishment and see if they have it.
And one last thing, LG, what's our email account again? I know I give it out on the commercials, but
if you want to hit us up on email for any reason whatsoever, you want to buy some ad time, or you just want to shoot the S with us, it's the starting lineup show at gmail.com.
This is going out to thousands of people, so if you want to just shoot me an email to conversate, I will give you time when I have time. But oh my goodness, that's a very bold promise to put out there. But I do want to talk sports now again, now that we're all well acquainted. Week 2 of the show. Thank you all for tuning in on Ticket 760, YouTube, however you might be listening. If you listen to me week 1, I called this one. LG, the receipts are on our YouTube or the podcast. The 76ers came back from down 3-1 to the Boston Celtics, and I was just saying that all week. I didn't think that the Celtics could beat the 76ers in a 7-game series with Joel Embiid.
Pat yourself on the back. I mean, I doubted you. I was like, what? No way. I didn't think it would happen. I just thought Boston, they were a championship level team not too long ago. And they couldn't hit a 3-pointer in game 7 to save their lives.
No, and I hate to say this because he's one of my favorite players. Derek White did put up some solid numbers, but overall he didn't shoot as well as Derek White usually does in these games that Philly won. And I always consider D. White the Celtics' ultimate X factor. If he plays well, they're almost unbeatable. But there's going to be a segment that I do a little bit later in this week of where do they go from here, where I just start talking about the teams that have been eliminated from the playoffs, because I love talking NBA, and there's going to be some heavy NBA talk on this show. So, yeah, the Boston Celtics, where do they go from here? Really, you look at it, and where do we go from here was really started last season when Jason Tatum tore his Achilles and they started just shedding salary. So they didn't re-sign Luke Cornett, thank you very much. They wanted to get underneath the luxury tax. I believe they accomplished that mission because they were a tax-paying team when they were contenders the last couple seasons. But this season really was you know what, we're just going to shed salary. If Jason Tatum comes back, great. Joe Mazzulla has them punching above their floor, I should say. Their ceiling would have been maybe the second round, somehow beating the Knicks and getting to the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe winning that somehow because Jason Tatum came back and played well. He did come back. Jason Tatum did play well. However, they did not have a center because they didn't re-sign Luke Kornet and they traded Kristaps Porzingis to the Hawks. So when you're talking about the starting lineup for the Boston Celtics in that Game 7, the only big man that could guard Joel Embiid is Luka Garza. And Luka Garza is listed at 6'10", 243. That's nice. Joel Embiid is easily 4 inches taller, right? What is Embiid listed at? Embiid is probably 7'2". He's listed at 7 foot 280, but he feels like he's another 2 inches taller when he's wearing shoes. I think he's been listed at 7 foot since he was at Kansas. So he's grown quite a bit. And Joel Embiid comes back from an appendix emergency surgery at the end of the season. They lose that first game and go down 3-1. And then he trolls everybody with the LeBron down 3-1 meme walking into Game 7. And he backs up that talk in 39 minutes, 34 points, 12 of 26 from the field, 9 of 11 from the free throw line, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, and a block. Joel Embiid is not the 76ers' best player anymore, but when you're putting up a thin front line like Boston, and even when you have a good defender on him, Embiid is a bucket. And I still think Tyrese Maxey is the best player. He did drop 30 points in 45 minutes. So for the 76ers, you have 2 pretty good superstars, and Paul George continues to be lights out from 3. He went 3 of 5 from 3 in that game. His last 10 games, which obviously go back to the regular season, he's shooting 41%. I wanted to pull up here at his postseason stats, 55% from 3 in that series. If Paul George is playing like that and Tyrese Maxey is going off and nobody can guard Embiid, the 76ers, they could beat the Knicks like that. That's how good they are when everybody is playing that good, and that's why you accumulate as many stars as you can in the NBA. That's
true, and going back to Embiid, he took a shot to the knee late in that game where he fell over. His own player fell back into him while trying to take a charge, and he got up hobbled, and then he looked to the bench, and he was like, nope, I'm staying in. And is he not the heart and soul of that team like Keldon Johnson is to the Spurs?
Yeah, Embiid is very much you love him as a 76ers fan because he is good when he goes out there, and you sort of have to understand, yeah, he's hurt all the time. That's sort of the frustrating thing. But if anything, he hears that criticism and he still wants to play through injuries. And this year has been the ultimate example. I saw it put very well, and I didn't know how to put it, and it's probably accurate medically because that man has gone through so many injuries and he's played basketball for so long that he might not have much cartilage left in his knees. He can't run, he can't jump, except maybe 5 or 10 times a game. They need to happen at the same time. You can see it. He is hobbling out there, and they make up for that by having former Spur Dom Barlow, who was on a 2-way contract and got converted to an NBA contract. They just let Dom go ahead and be the athlete that Embiid cannot be. And VJ Edgecombe also is out there to be sort of the athlete that Embiid sort of needs on the wing to gang rebound, because Embiid can still grab rebounds as a space eater, but he can't really mobily move and get rebounds. So he'll get rebounds that are more or less in his vicinity, but I thought Barlow did a great job sort of being the I will go after the ball in any which way kind of forward. Great player, Dom Barlow. He's going to evolve into a good role player for them. And VJ Edgecombe is just a freak athlete on the wing, doing a lot of great stuff, spreading the defense with a 3 shot now that he's really developed. But then they inserted Paul George and VJ Edgecombe, sort of like what the Spurs did. They took out Dom Barlow, who was a bit more of a traditional power forward, if you don't remember him with San Antonio. And I like this lineup for the majority of the playoffs for the 76ers, and that's sort of what they saw too, because that was the starting lineup that came into San Antonio. So I was a little bummed that Dom Barlow didn't get to play power forward in San Antonio, start for the 76ers. Good guy, cheering for Dom, but just to check, he did play 2 minutes in this game, but he had been starting a lot of the season. Andre Drummond only played 8 minutes because, again, Boston had a very thin line, so Quentin Grimes got 26 of the minutes. Nobody else played more than 10. So Nick Nurse really shortening up his lineup in that game 7. 76ers move on. They will play the Knicks. Like I said, Boston Celtics really didn't have high expectations this year. They win 56 games in the regular season, but they do not play well against the stars of the Philadelphia 76ers, who they made all-in moves going after a player like Paul George, and they got the 3rd overall pick they lucked into with VJ Edgecombe, and the 76ers, I think that they can beat the Knicks. That'll be a harder series. Mainly because Karl Anthony Towns is in there. However, we add a very fun fact that Joel Embiid has gone after Karl Anthony Towns on social media. Of course, the internet pulls that back up. I forgot about things like that because it goes all the way back to pre-2020 and 2019 when Joel Embiid was just wilding on social media. Luckily, he's matured, but it is something to keep an eye on there. That'll be a fun matchup. I don't think Cat can guard Embiid, and I don't think that they're going to utilize Karl Anthony Towns the way that they need to take advantage of that matchup. So I really do like that matchup. It'll be fun. We'll see if Paul George continues his hot streak. Down I-10. Houston Rockets season mercifully came to an end in Game 6 in Houston. Want to touch on that one as the Lakers move on to play Oklahoma City. A fun caveat in the Cavaliers and Raptors series that we'll have that game starting on Tuesday. When we come back on the starting lineup, we talk about it.
The takes are hot, even before the sun comes out. Back to the starting lineup.
Starting lineup on Ticket 760 and YouTube. I'm your host, Karl Schoening. LG in the studio with me, and we are in San Antonio. You might be watching anywhere in the world on YouTube, but San Antonio, Texas is where we reside. And I have to be careful here, LG, because our boss at iHeart is in Houston, based in Houston. We have iHeart friends and family that are going to be involved in this conversation. Not, anything personal or on the court or anything, but as Spurs fans, we need to relish in the Houston Rockets having their season come to a close.
Absolutely, and no, we don't. We don't have to watch ourselves. It's this San Antonio, that's Houston.
It's a fun thing. I-10 rivalry, and I was just kind of kidding. You're right, but Big Boss Brian listening, he can't take a side. I'll at least put it that way. But the Spurs fans,
he can definitely take a side. You know what? I'm inviting all you Houston fans to hop on the wagon. You know, there's enough room. You can still support the only Texas team left in the playoff. It's a Texas thing now.
That's true. There is that vibe. And to be honest with you, if you're a Rockets fan, I think you obviously wanted to win because your team made the playoffs, but you saw this team for what it was, as this was sort of a lost year. They were the second seed last year in the playoffs. They upgraded with Kevin Durant. Maybe they don't realize what a glue guy Dillon Brooks really was, and that's why he really, when it came to the Suns needing him to be a 21-point-per-game scorer, he evolved into that this season for Phoenix. Dillon Brooks probably wasn't going to average 20 on the Rockets as constructed. They probably would have given those responsibilities to Jalen Green, but they moved both of those guys for Kevin Durant, thinking that that's a necessary upgrade to then be contenders. Sure, you got the 2 seed, but are you contenders with that roster? And I like that move. Love KD. Probably going to be able to score until he's 45 in the NBA. But the real thing that just was a gut punch right away was they were doing team workouts in some nice remote island that, you know, basketball teams in the NBA can have some summer team workouts. I think it was the Caribbeans or something along those lines, Cabo. But Fred VanVleet tears his ACL, and this is before the season even starts. And they don't lose. I think it was game 3 in Houston where they were up 6 points with 30 seconds left. They don't lose that game with Fred VanVleet controlling the ball. That was very much a team that had been searching for their point guard all season long, thinking Amin Thompson could do it. Maybe Reed Shepherd could become that primary ball handler. Jabari Smith, why don't you go ahead and take the ball down the court a few times as a 6'10 power forward that can kind of shoot. Even Alperen Şengün was sort of tasked to be sort of a play initiator outside of his general comfort zone as sort of the high pivot that he really likes to run. And the KD would have been better, but he was hurt most of this series. He only played game 2 of this series. And before anybody takes shots at Kevin Durant, that man played on a sore calf in the NBA Finals, knowing that he probably shouldn't, tore his Achilles. He lives to hoop. That guy, I would never question his heart. But Kevin Durant, he was out with this, I think it was an ankle sprain first, and then a knee issue that happened in that game where he came back. So he's also 37. KD, I'm pretty sure about that one, is 37. We were talking about ages with the Spurs earlier. Kevin Durant, he's still going to be good next year, I imagine. Can the Rockets somehow upgrade, or are they going to say, hey, getting Steven Adams back, who was obviously part of their early part of the season, and then he went out with a season-ending injury as well, so this playoffs, they really were without 2 of their key rotation guys, and we talk about health with the Spurs being such a blessing this season, that I think the Rockets are somewhat okay with this first-round exit. It stings because it just happened, but it's understandable, LG.
They definitely need to either go younger, you know, not have 37-year-old Kevin Durant, even though he can still produce. You need to have some young superstars out there, and they do got a start of that. But I feel like they're going to be in a rebuilding type of year. The bench does not go deep enough. You look at the Lakers, they had Luka out, and their bench delivered. Their other starters made up for arguably one of the best point guards. I do that with the quotes because he's, you know, he does a lot more than point guard, Luka.
Yeah, and LeBron really did show why he has a GOAT argument in this series, because the entire Rockets defense had to lock in on LeBron James at 41 years old. He still dropped 28 points in 37 minutes in an elimination game, had 8 assists. And I want to give credit to DeAndre Ayton, who really does evolve into that Clint Capella role that he sort of turned down and scoffed at. He said, I'm DeAndre Ayton, they want me to be Clint Capella. And everybody, I think I mentioned this earlier, bullied him a little bit, saying, hey, you'd be lucky to be considered Clint Capella. You were the number 1 overall pick, sure, but with Austin Reeves and Luka Doncic and LeBron James, you sort of have to say, yeah, I'm Clint Capella in this case. I'm the 4th best player in the starting lineup. And then you maybe do debate, is Rui Hachimura a better player, Marcus Smart a better player than DeAndre Ayton? Sure, like I said, high-profile draft pick, but does he contribute to winning? And he did. He is a board getter, shot blocker, and all around good defensive player, sort of roller kind of player that he needs to be. He only has 7 points, but 16 rebounds was huge, as thin as that Los Angeles front line is. And I mentioned this going into the break of the last segment. Interesting caveat in the scheduling, LG, because the Raptors hit that crazy shot with RJ Barrett knocking it off the back of the iron and in to force a Game 7. This Lakers and Oklahoma City series now starts on Tuesday because the Cavaliers and the Raptors played on Sunday. So just to make sure that they didn't overload the Sunday schedule, Oklahoma City gets to rest a little bit longer, sure, but the Lakers need that rest a lot more. And maybe Luka comes back. Austin Reeves has already come back, and LeBron definitely needs as much rest as he can. So he actually thanked the Cavaliers, or the Raptors, I should say, for winning that game against his former team, the Cavaliers. So that was a kind of little funny caveat in how the scheduling worked out. But, you know, you bring it up to going back to your point about the Rockets needing to go younger. They really missed on Steph Castle. They should have taken Steph when he fell to them at 3. Looking back at that draft, Castle goes number 1, without a doubt, over Zachary Richichet and Alexandre Sarr. And Reed Shepherd was the 3rd pick taken by the Rockets. And yes, he's a good shooter. Terrible defender. That he actually made some solid defensive plays in the series, but on the whole, you don't want to task him to be a primary, you pick up that guy because we need help with him kind of person, obviously. So
sometimes that's just the luck of the draw. You know, maybe the Spurs had a better scouting team and they did a better job at scouting Steph Castle, or maybe the Rockets just had a different need they were trying to fill there. But, you know, sometimes that's just the luck. I mean, look where the lottery ball landed. They thought they were going to get the number 1 pick when the Spurs got Wemby.
Yeah, well, the funny thing about that is, so going all the way back to game 82, the Spurs were playing the Mavericks. The Mavericks were tanking and wanted to lose that game because the lottery ball would be better. They got Derek Lively, the 2nd out of that draft, so I thought that was a good move. They shut down Luka. That was kind of a controversial play. Luka wanted to play and make the playoffs. They said, no, we're going to shut you down and get you a lottery pick. Ended up being the right move by Mavs management. Probably the last smart move that Mavs management made. But then
poor Nico.
You look at that last game that the Spurs played, and they went out and tried to win that game. I talked about Dom Barlow last segment in the Philadelphia 76ers game. Dom almost had a 20-20 game. He went 20-19, and Spurs win that game. Because of that, if the Spurs had tried to lose, then they would have tied the Rockets for the 2nd worst record. No, they would have had the 2nd worst record outright, I beg your pardon. So Spurs win that game, they tie the Rockets. So when they tie the Rockets, it goes to a coin toss. The Rockets win the coin toss for the 2nd best chance of the 1st round pick in the Victor Wembanyama draft. The Spurs had the 3rd best opportunity because they lose that coin toss to the Rockets. And the Spurs, because of the winning culture, decide they're going to go out and play and try and beat the Mavericks. They go out and beat the Mavericks. They lose the coin toss. They get the number 1 overall pick. That is Victor Wembanyama. And we're talking about Wemby instead of Amen Thompson out there. No offense to Amen Thompson, but obviously.
Go!
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama's better. Having everybody cheer, go Spurs, go. I will touch on Spurs next segment. I also want to say that horse racing mattered for a little bit on Saturday. I'll tell you about that if you didn't know about it yourself. And then when we get back to the top of the hour, we really dive in. Spurs, T-Wolves. I do want to talk about the entire 2nd round setup in the NBA, and SAFC picked up a point this week, and we talk about it on the starting lineup on Ticket 760.
and no excuses. Start your day with a starting lineup.
Yes, sir, it is the starting lineup. I'm your host, Karl Schoening. You might be listening on Ticket 760, but we're also streaming live on YouTube. You never know when we're going to go live on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe, hit that like button. And LG, I need to just write this down somewhere, but I like to bring you in as well. How can they follow us on YouTube and the social media?
You can follow us on YouTube at Starting Lineup Live, and that would also be the handle for all of our social medias as well. So hit us up on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. You can hit us up on Instagram and Facebook.
Isn't Twitter at TSL Live?
Oh, you're right,
yes.
exactly, because they don't allow as many characters as that. So yeah, TSL 760
that's
on
right.
Twitter.
There you go. Yeah,
thank you
yeah.
for correcting me there.
Yeah,
That's
and
why
then
you're
thank you
here.
for correcting me.
Set me straight there a little bit. But we do have some comments that came in on the YouTubes here.
Awesome.
Ed Burma's in here. He says, if the Knicks bruise up Embiid like they did against Wemby, Embiid will falter and get hurt. That's a good point, but
he's already hurt.
Yeah.
he's been that's been the most, because I watched a lot of 76ers games, so they're my second team, so that's why I sort of made that 3-1 comeback prediction. And I will say that he gets beat up a lot because he's so much bigger. But yeah, I think he will probably not play as many minutes because he's gone hard, and I could see the Knicks making that game plan, get physical with them, and see what happens.
I mean, man did have an appendectomy 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the guy's playing through some injuries for sure.
Yeah.
But according to Shaquille O'Neal, an appendectomy is a minor surgery.
Ooh, not if it bursts.
I think any kind of surgery is not minor.
No,
Sorry.
that's fair. There's no such thing as a minor surgery, and I think if your appendix burst, like
I think
you
that's
gotta,
worse.
Like I don't know if it burst. I didn't actually read into the stories. I was just like, oh, it's just another thing, one after another with Embiid. And this one really sucked because it wasn't an on-court injury, but. I had a friend who had her appendix burst on her, and she said it was the worst pain she's ever felt in her life.
Yeah.
And they have to get like toxins sucked out of you and such. So, Embiid, no matter how it happened, that like you say, there's no such thing as a minor surgery. Playing through surgery, he will play through injuries, and I think that's part of his legacy is he was always hurt. So I think he is leaving it all out on the floor. I wouldn't be surprised if he retired next season or two, and he's only 33, right? We were talking about that.
Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me at all. We got another chat up in here on the YouTubes. Texas Latina 26 in here. She's got a message for the Houston fans going to back where I said the bandwagon is open. You can jump on the Spurs bandwagon, but if you don't want to do that, you could at least jump behind Houston's own De'Aaron Fox.
That's
and support
true.
him.
Yeah, D-Fox. That would be an interesting question. Not appropriate right now in the playoff runs, but if he grew up a 76 or Rockets fan, I imagine he did.
I would think so. I mean, I
Seems
grew up
reasonable.
a Spurs fan.
Yeah.
So.
I actually don't like it when people from San Antonio pull for another
our
team.
Lakers fans.
Yeah. Families from Philly, and so I'm going to pull for the Philadelphia Eagles because I would be disowned otherwise. But
you.
Jabari Young, the only time I ever gave him a hard time when he wrote for the Express News, and I think he came back a little bit later. I don't know if he returned with the Express News. Now he's with Forbes. Jabari Young is doing great, but he is from Philly, and he's a Cowboys fan. And I gave him nonstop flack for that. So that's the only time. I don't care if you're a Cowboys fan, but if you're a Cowboys fan from Philadelphia, then I feel sorry for you because something must have happened. That's probably an early childhood trauma that we're not going to get into. But
makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
No. For Jabari's case, the Eagles were terrible and the Cowboys were good. And if you're going to be a fan of a sport, watch the good, right?
Yeah. I guess.
The people who are just LeBron fans, they actually sort of framed that to me one time where it's like, I enjoy watching something that I enjoy watching, which is a good basketball player playing basketball. So, if LeBron's on the Cavaliers, I'm going to be a Cavs fan, but I'm a LeBron fan.
Well, it's like everyone who's watching Wemby who's not a Spurs fan. They're watching Wemby because they love the game of basketball. And when something's out there, someone is out there that can do the things that he does, kind of like an Ohtani for the Dodgers. You have to watch. It's must-see sports.
Exactly.
It's high level.
Perfect segue, LG. And we appreciate all your comments. If you want to get involved with the show, you can reach out to us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. X and YouTube are obviously the best way. YouTube, the most preferred when we're live. Interact with us so we can read them as they happen. But when we check out the must-watch sports, probably the most must-watch event for an entire sport is the Kentucky Derby. People will watch other football games before the Super Bowl. How many people, LG, do you think watch horse racing before the Kentucky Derby?
Not many.
No, it's got
many.
It's got to be the most exponential. Hey, the people who are at a random OTB watching horse racing for the love of horse racing to the Kentucky Derby jump.
Yeah,
like they're.
What's the Triple Crown there? The Kentucky Derby, the Preakness,
the Preakness, and
I don't remember the other one.
Yeah,
but yeah, those are the only ones that the majority of the non-fans who normally don't watch horse racing, the people that, they're not the people that are at Retama Park placing bets right now. They're the people that go there this time of the season.
Yeah, the West Coast
they
still
get their
running.
mint juleps and their weird hats, and they do their thing only at this time of the season.
Yeah. If you're over at Retama Park right now because the horse track at San Diego's going, then
Or you're betting on the puppies.
Yeah. Well, if you're betting on something that doesn't have a human controlling it, good luck. That's where you really go after the long shots. I would say that my dad had a frequently over the course of his career with the Spurs, located business that he would frequent would be Retama Park.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, because he's from Austin, right? Like he lives in Austin and he drove down here. The Spurs were always sort of planting that seed of making the connection with Austin. So they actually liked that he did the Longhorns and he was like an Austin resident and willing to sort of be sort of an Austin spokesperson. So they even brought him in last year to interview Keldon as part of the Spurs Week in Austin. They just think that they can take that fan base from being a sort of Dallas and Houston mixed up with Spurs fans to making it as Spurs as possible. So because he would come down from Austin to San Antonio so early, he would just say, you know what, I'm 20 minutes away instead of being 2 hours away. He gets down there at 1 o'clock for a 7 o'clock game. Yeah, kill a little time betting the ponies. It was his entertainment. So anyway, I want to go back, but I do want to talk about something that in a minute. But in Kentucky, the Derby, right? Golden Tempo won Saturday's 152nd running of the Kentucky Derby, which averaged 19.6 million on NBC and Peacock, making it the most viewed run for the Roses on record since Nielsen began tracking the average audiences in 1988. And according to preliminary data from Nielsen and Adobe Analytics, the audience peaked at 24.4 million from 7 to 7:15 Eastern. Post time for the race was at 7:03. And, that's
pretty good.
That's pretty good. It is one of the most exciting 2 minutes in sports. I'm not going to do any kind of, over the radio play-by-play because I would say just go ahead and watch it.
24 million for a 2-minute event. The NBA released stats just recently, about a week ago, that their average viewers were 33 million for the NBA playoffs. And that's average. This is 1 day event. 24 million is a big pool.
And I could guarantee you that if there's, I guess, the qualifying races to get into the Kentucky Derby, because they're not just going to say, hey, you won over at Retama Park. If you pay enough, you can get in. No, these are the horses that are, I think they're all under 3 years old, or they're 3 years old in their third year of life kind of thing. And if you win the Kentucky Derby, you exponentially increase your value as a horse because then they start breeding you.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
So that's
a hell of a reward to get there for winning.
Oh, yeah. And then it's really funny. Smarty Jones won. I think he just came short of winning the Triple Crown. And Smarty Jones, you start to see if you were like my dad and went to these horse races, there's a funny thing where Smarty Jones has all these little offsprings. So you see Smarty Smith or something like that. You can see the name Smarty or Jones mixed in. So a very interesting sport, horse racing. And I want to actually watch it. I did not. I was busy on Saturday preparing for SAFC. We will talk a little bit of SAFC in hour 2. Spurs and Timberwolves tip off at 8:30 tonight. That's going to be a fun one here. I do want to talk about all the second round matchups in the NBA playoffs. Maybe touch on how bad of a weekend it was for Boston sports fans. It's been a rough, really last 2 weeks for Boston sports fans. And of course, we'll probably wrap it up with Spurs. But LG, I didn't get into my story. I wanted to tell you a story that's actually my dad's story, but it's about horse racing and Manu Ginobili and my dad. And you'll laugh at it. So that's a little teaser to get you into the second hour. I'll start off with that on the starting lineup as we continue here on Ticket 760. Don't forget to leave a comment if you want to be read on the YouTube channel, or hit me up on X/Twitter at OnAirKarl. That is Carl with a K. So Karl. On Air Karl on X and Instagram. Hour 2 of the starting lineup when we come back here on Ticket 760 and YouTube.
Is the starting lineup. Here's your host, Carl Schoening.
Hour 2 of the starting lineup on Ticket 760 and YouTube. I'm starting at your voice coming through your speakers, and on the other side, starting as the audio technician, is LG. We talk Spurs. We're also going to get into a couple other things around the NBA and where a couple teams that were eliminated go from here. But the big news tonight, we start off with the head story in San Antonio. Top of our headlines is Spurs and Timberwolves tonight. LG, I'm excited. Spurs haven't played since Tuesday, and they've had a little bit of time to figure out probably the most important question of who's going to guard Wemby and what do we do in that situation. So you have maybe the obvious, but I don't know about it, Rudy Gobert guarding Wemby.
Yeah, his good friend, apparently.
I don't know if that's actually how they go about it, though.
Oh, okay. All right. He was asking him in one of the post games what kind of water filter you have. So, I mean...
They've known each other for years. Gobert and Wemby played on the French national team. I think it was 2020 when Wemby was 16. They're on the national team, and everybody was starting to realize that Victor Wembanyama was special as like a 7'3" teenager that could size up and score on, at the time, the defensive player of the year in Rudy Gobert. So that started to become maybe the beginning of Wemby being known around the internet and just like, I guess, like Twitter sphere of, viral videos. There's some video of a 9-year-old Wemby playing basketball, and he's already dominating. Of course, he's taller than all the other kids on the team, but it's just crazy how far back this guy has been playing basketball. He was built for this. Yeah, and it helps that his mom was a basketball player. His dad was a track athlete. I believe he also played basketball. As much as I'm a fan of Wemby and such, I don't go too far into their history of their parents. I hear things, but I don't necessarily commit it to memory. But both of his siblings play basketball. I think Oscar Wembanyama is going to be interesting potential second-round draft pick, so somebody to keep an eye on. He's only 6'8", if I'm not mistaken. Only, quote unquote. Only. That's something to keep an eye on. But the real interesting thought process here is, does Jaden McDaniels guard Wemby? Because he did a phenomenal job on Jamal Murray. And McDaniels has the length and athleticism to make Wemby maybe a little bit less effective on the perimeter. And then do the Timberwolves do what the Blazers did, and Donovan Clingan does what Rudy Gobert did and sort of guard a perimeter player like a Steph Castle and dare Castle to become a three-point shooter? So that wasn't a bad strategy for the Blazers. It certainly threw a wrench in the Spurs game plan, but I think the Spurs started to figure it out towards the end of the series, and it would be an interesting thing to try and replicate that if you're the Timberwolves, but it might be what they end up doing working on such little prep time. Chris Finch said after the Game 6 that he hasn't really had a chance to look at the Minnesota Timberwolves scouting report for the San Antonio Spurs, so how do you guard Victor Wembanyama? You probably figure out if you're going to try and make other players beat you like what the Blazers did, or do you just play Wemby straight up and let him get his and you guard the other players? So I think that that's not a bad strategy for the Timberwolves because they do have Rudy Gobert is very familiar with Victor Wembanyama. You put Gobert on Wemby and you let Wemby do whatever he really wants to against somebody that he could probably take off the dribble. Spurs don't really ISO Wemby all that much. They like to have that free-flowing offense where anybody can get equal opportunities and Wemby can sort of have a gravity that pulls as opposed to watching him face up and go up against other players. They occasionally will ISO Wemby, but he's not an ISO-heavy player. So you have to wonder if what they do when they do put a big man on Wemby and see if they're going to just allow Gobert to guard him around the perimeter. I think that would be just fine idea to start off with, but McDaniels also seems like a very likely candidate. I don't think that they go necessarily what the Blazers did with Drew Holiday and put a guard on Wemby, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Julius Randle also sort of play that, give it a shot. It's going to be the kitchen sink, LG.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely going to be defense by committee is what I think, and Rudy Gobert will be on him to start, but you can't just put Rudy on him. He did a great job, by the way, against Jokic in the Nuggets series. He kept Jokic, scoring a little bit down. He's still got his points there, but Wemby's a different player. Jokic, he's got that mid-range, can shoot the three, throws up the hook shot here and there. But what are you going to do when Wemby gets down low? When they run that pick and roll and Wemby's, a threat on the perimeter with his three-point shot, but then steps around you. The dude can get to the basket in 2 steps from the perimeter. Jokic can't do that. So I think Rudy Gobert is going to have his hands full. They're going to definitely have to play defense by committee, move Wemby out of his favorite spots, put a body on him, play him physically. That's the only thing you can do, and then just hope that he doesn't dominate the game like he's known to do.
And I think that's exactly right, because as you were pointing out a few things there, I blank on what happened at the beginning of that Nuggets series where they announced the finalists for the Defensive Player of the Year because it's the regular season voting, so they announced the final 3 of each of those categories, and Gobert he ended up being voted 4th, but he wasn't in the top 3, and he sort of took a little offense to that. I don't think he necessarily said it, but he did sort of have reports that he felt slighted. Goes out there and just, like you said, made Nikola Jokic very ineffective. We talked about it last week. The Nuggets were playing so banged up without Peyton Watson and Aaron Gordon that they sort of needed stellar nights from Nikola Jokic. You needed the 40-point nights, not the 28-point nights from Jokic. And I think whatever game plan they developed that really sort of let Jokic beat you with a 3-point shot, but otherwise Rudy Gobert made him ineffective. And when he wasn't knocking down threes, Gobert's defense was really working. He's riding some of that momentum into this series. Yeah, you're right. I think because of that strong defensive series, you let Gobert get the start on Wemby and see what he does.
See what happens.
But you definitely got to mix up your looks against Victor Wembanyama. McDaniels undoubtedly will guard Wemby as the primary defender some point in this series. And like I said, Julius Randle seems to make a little bit of sense. Naz Reid might have to go in there and bump around a little bit. So it is going to be a defensive committee. But the Spurs, like I said, are sort of getting lucky that they're going up against such a banged-up team. Mike Conley is probably going to be their starting point guard if Dosunmu and Ant can't play. So that was the story in the top of the hour that we kind of want to touch on here.
Yep. 38-year-old Mike Conley. He's still producing though, man. He's still capable of starting at point guard, and he still will damage you at the 3-point line.
Well, I was referencing that Anthony Edwards is questionable for tonight.
Oh, yeah.
So you're right. Mike Conley will need to play out of his mind if Dosunmu, who they needed him to play out of his mind. He dropped 43 points in a big game that put the Timberwolves up 3-1, but that was also the same game that Ant left in the second quarter. So if there's no Ant-Man, there's no Dosunmu, then you have Mike Conley at the point guard. But with Ant questionable, in fact, I pulled this up. I wanted to read this because I thought it was a very interesting read. This is just posted 7 o'clock on Sunday. The Timberwolves listed Anthony Edwards as questionable. This is on ESPN, written by Anthony Slater, who's a good follow. And Edwards suffered a bone bruise when he hyperextended his knee in Game 4 of the first round against the Nuggets and went through light on-court work this weekend, traveled with the Timberwolves to San Antonio on Sunday, and was officially cleared for basketball activities ahead of the team's Monday shoot-around. Because we live in the social media world, Anthony Edwards released a YouTube video on his personal page Sunday morning.
Of course he did.
Indicated a clip of him running on an underwater treadmill, and an interview with David Hines, the Timberwolves vice president of medical performance, who said that the recovery timeline was 1 or 2 weeks. And this is the quote from Hines. How does he look and how is he feeling these next couple of weeks? He writes as a question, I think he can return sooner if he can hit all of his metrics for pain management, mobility, functional strength. So, the Spurs would never. Could you imagine Wemby and the Spurs top medical, whoever they want to put out there as like a spokesperson? I just feel like that. It's not. It seems like Ant's sort of like, doing things that a 22-year-old American would like to.
The dude does have like a reality show on some streaming network, so he's media savvy and he likes to be in the spotlight. He likes to put things out like that. The Spurs like to keep things a little more guarded, keep their secrets a little closer to the chest. You don't know if somebody's going to play until it's a game time decision. But
very, very interestingly, this happens in 2026, and it's a very funny thing that. It went out on YouTube, and you had a very high-ranking official within the Minnesota Timberwolves medical staff go on this YouTube video, and that's just Ant Edwards, and
that's him producing.
And in a weird way, you hear about all these players that want to move on to their next team. The Spurs own, I think it's the 2030 pick, unprotected from the Timberwolves, or it's an unprotected swap that they got in the Rob Dillingham trade for the 8th overall pick. A couple years ago in the Steph Castle trade. So the interesting thing here, Ant Edwards actually seems Hollywood. This guy needs to go to LA. He might go to Atlanta because he's from Atlanta, but Anthony Edwards is among one of the few people that I think actually it makes sense. People are wondering, when is he going to go to a bigger market? Because he seems like he wants to be name and lights kind of guy. Minnesota, we talked about this last week, LG, no real interest in going to Minnesota.
None.
Yeah, that was a topic of conversation. We were curious, just out of curiosity. Flights were $800, and I don't think that $800 on the whole trip would have been worth it. So that ended the conversation there. We probably would have gone to Denver. We could have talked ourselves into going to Denver. Tickets were much cheaper, too.
I love Denver.
Denver would have been a lot of fun. Just the mountains alone. But Minnesota, hey, it'll be a fun series. I'm looking forward to it. I have another Wemby stat on the other side of this break that I didn't get to that might blow your mind, but probably won't because it's Wemby, and we're almost accustomed to having our minds blown these days. But we'll talk about that. The Wemby stat, an impressive one, when we come back on Ticket 760.
Spurs talk. This is the starting lineup with Karl Schoening.
Yes, sir, it is the starting lineup. It is your home for Spurs talk. I am on the radio broadcast with Dan Weiss. 8:30 tip-off from the Frost Bank Center. Spurs radio game night gets started on the San Antonio Spurs radio network. That will be 8 o'clock on AM 1200 or on the Spurs app. DJ LG 210 is how you can reach out to LG, my technician. He makes us sound good and look good if you're watching us on YouTube. And LG, I need you to be a little bit sharper on producing me, because I'll say things and forget that I say things. So I want to tease. I teased a couple things that I want to get to.
Yeah.
We talked Kentucky Derby at the end of the 6 o'clock hour. And I teased that there was a story I wanted to get to while we were talking Derby about my dad, Bill Schoening, who was the radio voice of the Spurs for 24 years. We got to get him on the show at some time because he'll tell the story better. But I've heard it so many times that I can sort of, mention it. So my dad, he likes the ponies. He bets the ponies. It's his form of entertainment. He picked up a saying from somebody who probably needs it to be less of a form of entertainment, that my dad finds amusing because he doesn't have a gambling problem. He just enjoys, hey, I have $50. I'm just going to go out to the track and see if I can
enjoys responsibly.
Yeah,
yes.
He enjoys responsibly. That's a great way to put it. So the phrase was, I hope I break even. I could use the money. But yeah, if my dad went in with $50, watched the horses race for an hour and left with 25, then good day. If he went in with $50, lost it all, well, we spend $50 in an afternoon doing stuff sometimes. So anyhow, my dad was having a decent day one time, in his last race of the day, he's looking at the program for the horses, and he sees an Argentinian horse, and my dad's like, you know what? Just because of Manu Ginobili, I'm going to put money on this Argentinian horse.
Okay.
It hits, and my dad's excited. He keeps the program, and he waits to see Manu the next day at shoot-around. Takes the program up to Manu, and he says, hey, Manu, I had to tell you, I bet the horses, and he explained the process of how you look at it and says, see, this horse is from Argentina, and I bet on him because of you, because otherwise he was 14-1. And he's like, huh. And my dad was so excited to tell Manu about this. He's like, and how much money did you win, Billy? And he's like, $150. And Manu looked at my dad, looked at the program. He's like, Billy, you have an addiction. I think that you need to realize you have an addiction to these horses, because Manu had just signed a $50 million extension, that season. Mm-hmm. So yeah, my dad tells it a little bit more recency bias. Like he had just signed it, the week before, but I'm pretty sure it happened in the off season, but still.
Okay.
Funny little side story there with Manu. And I also wanted to touch on something. I saw a very interesting stat. I wanted to bring it up in Spurs talk, but I want to get into it right now before we go around the rest of the action in the NBA second round. I see this from the Wall Street Journal, and I'm going to see if I get his name, because I wanted to follow him, but I can't really find the guy who wrote this for the...
What? You tell me he doesn't have a presence on Twitter?
It's interesting. Robert O'Connell. I'm sure he does, but they don't have his handle on there. And you know how some journalists are moving away from X and Twitter, but the Wall Street Journal will still post it. So this was an interesting one. The San Antonio Spurs superstar Victor Wembanyama blocks more shots than anyone, but it's when he doesn't lay a finger on the ball that it's truly destroying NBA offenses. And in the Wall Street Journal, he talks about how the Spurs with Wemby on the court have the biggest difference between shots in proximity to the rim. So when Wemby is on the court, players shoot 3 feet further back than when Wemby is on the court, and nobody's even close. And then he goes in, and it's a full article that I need to read the whole thing of. But the Twitter, I retweeted the tweet from the Wall Street Journal. The video that's associated with that retweet explained it pretty well, where essentially Wemby leads the league in nopes. And he brought up a highlight of Denny Avdia in the last playoff series, working so hard to get past Steph Castle to get into the paint, and Wemby's right there, and Avdia passes it out. Any other, and maybe Rudy Gobert's the exception, but any other big man that's in that general vicinity, Avdia shoots that ball. He worked hard to get to the rim, but he might as well not shoot that ball because Wemby's just going to block it, and that leads to a look from three that's slightly contested and misses.
Yeah.
So,
no offense to Robert O'Donnell, but duh. This has been going on for 3 seasons now.
It's a dub, but the actual metric of however he figured out of shots within 13 feet.
That's impressive. Yeah. That's an impressive stat there.
And that's what I really like, because I got into this argument with somebody one time on Twitter who said that they thought that Rudy Gobert was still the best rim protector in the NBA because teams shoot like a higher percentage.
The percentages, yeah.
But the Spurs do a really good job of funneling defenders to Wemby, and Wemby's also athletic enough that he can come out of nowhere and make you think twice, and you didn't see him, and that's why you maybe just try a shot sometimes. And sometimes,
well, apparently the nopes needs to be a stat. We need to start keeping track of nopes.
But there's only like 3 players that would actually record nopes, in my opinion.
Okay, you're right.
You know, like I would say the only wings are probably the Thompson twins, maybe Kawhi if he's playing especially motivated, maybe LeBron. But even, LeBron used to have that chase down block, doesn't have it anymore. That's one of the few things that LeBron does show his age is if he has a chase down block, let me know. He used to do it so often where he would get a nope because you heard LeBron's footsteps coming down. He's 41 now. I can see why that one doesn't fall in. If you really want to be impressed, LeBron at 41 is probably one of the top 15 athletes in the NBA. And then you go back and watch what he was doing when he was in Cleveland his first time around. Oh my goodness. It makes you really realize what a special athlete LeBron is and was. But I do want to touch on the second round matchups, as the entire second round matchup is set on the NBA. We've talked plenty of Timberwolves and Spurs today, but Thunder Lakers, that series gets started Tuesday night on Peacock/NBC. The Thunder win that series in 5 if Luka doesn't come back. If Luka does come back, I think the Lakers could maybe push that to 7, depending on how good Luka looks. But Thunder, too good. They're going to probably advance, mostly because even if Luka comes back and he's 90%, I don't think it's enough. Luka has a great ability to bend games to his will with his offensive ability. Just not enough to beat the Thunder unless he were really in a rhythm. We'll see. Tuesday, tomorrow, we'll hear the official reports. Luka seems to be progressing a little bit, but it's one of those injuries that he would probably be out at least another week or two, and that's rushing. And we'll see what the Lakers decide to do in that one. On the Eastern Conference side, the Pistons and the Cavaliers both played Game 7s on Sunday, and they will get started Tuesday night, tomorrow night at 5 o'clock Central Time. Tomorrow night, if you're watching, listening on the radio. It's obviously Sunday night if you're listening to our recording of radio right now on the live show on YouTube. But Pistons Cavaliers, there's a weird Jekyll and Hyde thing that I'm concerned about with the Pistons now, because Tobias Harris saved the day and became that second scorer with Cade Cunningham in that series against the Magic when they were desperately looking for a second scorer. The Magic blew an opportunity in Game 6. I believe it was some ridiculous stat, like they went 23 minutes without scoring. And that's just wild, or at least making a field goal. And the Magic they really lost their chance in Game 6. Pistons found some momentum and won their Game 7. Cavaliers, same thing. It was tied at the half against the Raptors, but the Raptors make some careless turnovers in the third quarter. They create some separation. That separation gets the Cavaliers to this matchup against the Pistons. Cynical Spurs fan in me, LG, I want to say James Harden doesn't become the regular season James Harden that puts up a lot of numbers. He tends closer towards the playoff James Harden that just doesn't really show up against the Pistons. They tough that one out, and I think they win that series. I really think they win that in 5 if the Pistons show up as the regular season Pistons. Cade Cunningham said after the series against the Magic that the Magic made them look in the mirror. Cade Cunningham also is coming back from a collapsed lung. So he got to play the end of the regular season, and he got to play that 7-game series against the Magic. Interesting note there. I think if you continue with Tobias Harris being a solid second option, Pistons win that series, maybe in 5, but really, I think the Pistons win that series. But if they end up being the team where Tobias Harris isn't your second scorer, then the Pistons are the team that are looking to figure out who that is in the offseason. The Cavaliers did go out and get that second scorer in James Harden. We talked about how the Timberwolves are sort of a throwback team with the two big men of Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle up front. They're very similar. Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen are two very traditional forwards that the Cavaliers have, and that'll give the Pistons a little bit of issue. But overall, the Spurs and the Pistons and the Cavaliers, that series, I'm going to go ahead and say the Pistons win that one, and it'll be a tougher one. Maybe I want to say 6 games. 76ers Knicks. Wrap up this segment by saying 76ers are going to upset the Knicks. I'm going to call it in 5 games. They win both games in Madison Square Garden. The Knicks take 1 game in Philadelphia. Wrap it up. 76ers, slight homer bias there, but they're going to go to the Eastern Conference Finals finally with the process. All right, we'll talk about that and more on the starting lineup.
Start your day with the starting lineup.
We hope you have started off your day with the starting lineup pretty good here. If you're listening on the radio or on Ticket 760, I'm Karl Schoening. I'm your host for the starting lineup. LG making the show run in the other room. And LG, we're here in the final half hour of the show, and we want to let people know how they can get in contact with us, and we'll read their content over the interwebs if we can get to it.
Yeah, if you're watching live, jump in the chat at Starting Lineup Live on YouTube. If you want to hit us up on X at TSL760, on the social media, Starting Lineup Live, Instagram, Facebook, and what are the other ones? TikTok, and I'm forgetting some. We're on Threads. Threads as well, yeah.
Yeah, Threads is an interesting place. I go there occasionally, and I see why I don't post there, because it seems like some people are fake, like a lot of people, I should say, it seems like they're fake, and there's some interesting trends on there.
I don't go there too often, but I am. It's basically a simulcast of our Instagram, so better to just join us on the gram.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram where I do post, and I suppose I don't think I'm simulcasting, but I am at On Air Karl on Instagram, and I should simulcast on Threads, because why not?
It doesn't hurt. It's easy to do too, because it's all the meta apps.
Yeah, at On Air Karl with a K.
Well, Facebook too. I think I forgot Facebook.
I need to get on Facebook again.
And if you would like to support this show financially, you can hit us up at buymeacoffee.com/thestartinglineup. We do accept tips.
Yes, we do, and I will actually use that for coffee most likely, because I think Tuesday's show is going to be live. Fingers crossed. We're hoping to go live on usual 6 a.m. radio. We'll still have a feed, but It'll be in the morning, and I will be caffeinated.
YouTube and 760 live on Tuesday.
But still, if you're going to follow us on YouTube, we will go live. That will not be part of the morning show in the not too distant future. But LG and I, we work the Spurs game, so we probably will opt for the sleep and talk 6 a.m. instead of instant reaction on Spurs.
Especially with these late starts.
But yeah, there will be times where we go live, especially when we get to football season and we can both make it. But yeah, the late nights into the early mornings are tough, so we might do that to simulcast starting hour. We'll figure out a little bit more as we start here. We're just in week 2 of the show.
Week 2, the first show of week 2. We are 6 shows in. I can't believe it. Time flies.
Yeah. Tell me about it. But speaking of time flying, time is going to fly for some of these teams, and time is going to need to be very slow and thought out for other teams. NBA playoffs, we do like to talk about who advanced, but I just want to rapid fire run through where do they go from here for the teams that are no longer in the playoff hunt, because these are obviously the better NBA teams, and some of them I've touched on, but I'll recap real quick. Starting off with the team I know I didn't touch on, the Phoenix Suns. They sort of already had the where do we go from here moment and hit complete rebuild by trading Kevin Durant, waiving Bradley Beal. They have Devin Booker to still build around. I like Mark Williams just fine as a center. He's maybe a little bit expensive, so they already drafted his replacement in Kaman Maluach, and Dylan Brooks has emerged as a star player. Jalen Green, who they got in that Kevin Durant trade, both of those players can be solid pieces moving forward. Where do they go from here? See what moves can be made, as they're sort of financially strapped, but the part of that is the Bradley Beal contract. I should see when that officially comes off of the books. I don't believe they stretched him. I think they outright waived him, and that was sort of an addition by subtraction, because Bradley Beal he's injured all the time, unfortunately. I think he's out most of this year with a hip injury, so hopefully he plays well. He was a good player in Washington, but it was smart for the Suns to move on, and they punched above what people thought they would be for sure. They make the playoffs as the 8th seed, but get swept by Oklahoma City. Houston Rockets just get healthy. Fred VanVleet, Steven Adams. If Houston can pick up a good player to play for them off of the bench in that unit that sort of maybe hits the buyout market, it'll be interesting to see who wins the chase for DeMar DeRozan, but I don't think it'll be the Rockets, and I don't know if they really would want him, but he would be a good option as sort of a backup scorer, point guard, or primary ball handler, lead guard if the Rockets could get DeRozan. Denver Nuggets. Perhaps somebody who they deserve an entire segment. I'll think it out, but the Denver Nuggets have a very complicated future. You really are always kind of curious. They have a good regular season. They won that championship, but since they won that championship, they've traded a lot of those pieces away, and the Cam Johnson trade didn't really pan out the way they wanted to. He wasn't a significant upgrade from Michael Porter Jr., so I'm kind of curious. I don't think they have many assets to really work with. They have Aaron Gordon, who he should stay there as long as Jokic stays there. Jamal Murray. Could you really get a good value for Jamal Murray? He signed a pretty big contract, and I feel like he's one of those Nuggets for life kind of guy, that his value in Denver is a bit higher than it is anywhere else in the league. And it's hard to trade those kind of players in this new CBA. So who would really want Jamal Murray? Maybe a team that can swing it, but it's not likely that you're going to dedicate as much of your cap to Jamal Murray if you're anybody but the Nuggets. Trailblazers, re-sign Thiago Splitter. That should be enough of a priority for the offseason. Figure out what you can do, where you fall in the draft, if there's any opportunities to maybe...
I really don't think that's high on the priority list for their owner. For some reason, something's telling me that might not be high on his priority list.
Yeah, the owner for the Blazers, just look it up. I'm not going to say anything more than he has a very interesting outlook, and Lou Williams actually said he would do the NBA coaching job at the Portland Trailblazers for, I think, $1.5 million is what was floated out there.
Okay, is that like below the league minimum? I'm not sure.
It's like significantly below the league minimum for a head coach.
Isn't that like the rookie minimum now?
I want to say most NBA coaches are probably making north of $3 million at the base. I want to say Pop, when he was coaching it was reported he was making around $11 million. So not saying that whoever should coach the Portland Trailblazers, if they're not going to go with Tiago Splitter, which I think would be the wrong move, they need to correct what they did wrong and see if Becky Hammond's interested in the job still.
Okay.
She was a finalist. They went with Chauncey Billups instead. I thought that there was I thought there was some bad juju around picking Chauncey over Becky Hammond anyway. If you're not going Tiago, go another Spurs player or former, franchise employee route with Becky Hammond. But that'll be interesting. And I don't know if Becky would. I don't know if that I would hope that probably increases Becky Hammond's pay 1.5, but even her might be too good for being cheap. So we'll see what actually happens there with the Blazers. But Denny Avdia, obviously breakout star. They have some good young pieces. I think that they don't really need to touch much. Just do what they can. And if an opportunity presents itself, maybe see if they can get a second star in there. Orlando Magic, just play above what you were this season. I like the Magic. Franz Wagner's a good player. Paolo Banchero's up and down, but he's very talented. They have a good chunk of guys. Desmond Bane, very much a good pickup for them, but they traded a lot for him, and that's going to be interesting towards their moving forward. But they are definitely better than the 8th seed in the East. Toronto Raptors, they did punch above their class. Great to get to the 5 seed. Toronto's always an interesting place to try and draw talent. Don't necessarily know what they can do, but they do have a good group of players. Love Scotty Barnes. Colin Murray-Boyles really impressed me this series against the Cavaliers. I like RJ Barrett just fine, Emmanuel Quickley, etc. They have a good future, young players. Brandon Ingram, if he could play, that would be great. He's an interesting kind of polarizing player, but he's good being the 3rd best player on the team. And the Atlanta Hawks, man, 2027 is the last year of that pick swap. I hope that they just tank. The Spurs could really, actually, they own the 2027 pick outright. So the Spurs will have 2 first-round picks as it stands going into next season. I just want the Hawks to be a bottom dwelling team. This was lightning in a bottle this season. The swap isn't going to look great, but I do think that the Spurs can hope for maybe 2027 and not be a good year for the Hawks. Everything after that 2027 year needs to be the Hawks looking to try and get Anthony Edwards to come home to Atlanta, Georgia. And the Boston Celtics, we talked about them as well. They just need to make a few moves that will get them back to a bit of a thicker front court. Once again, thank you for not re-signing Luke Cornett. Big pickup for the Spurs. Would have really helped against Joel Embiid and their front line in that series against Philadelphia. That's about it, really. I like the Celtics a lot. Jason Tatum just needs to be 100% with good full offseason of working out from that Achilles recovery will do him good, and the Celtics and the Jays will be back next season, maybe with a new center. We'll talk about that more as we roll on here on the starting lineup. When we come back, we talk SAFC here on Ticket 760.
To the starting lineup.
This is the starting lineup on Ticket 760. I'm your host, Karl Schoening. Last segment of the show. If you're listening on Ticket 760, Dan Patrick's coming up next, right? So, maybe you're a little early, the first time listening to us because you're a Pat listener.
Dan and the Danettes.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys maybe tuning in a little bit early to that show, and maybe you'll like us as well. If you're listening on Ticket 760, we appreciate that. We would like to ride this momentum. We have some comments we'd like to get to on our YouTube feed. One of the ways you can listen to us. Go ahead and read them, LG.
Yeah, shout out to Himbayama.
Oh, yeah,
who just signed up here on our YouTube channel. He was asking, what's the show's schedule? And I said, Sometimes we record the show live on YouTube the night before it airs on Ticket 760 in the morning, but we are aiming to start on Tuesday with doing both the shows simultaneously live from 6 to 8 a.m. every weekday.
Yep. And the goal is eventually to have a lot more content on YouTube than just the show that airs on the radio broadcast. We're just getting started, and because of this recording the show to upload a little later, my sleep schedule's been thrown off. I really do think here, once we can do the show live, we'll have some live reaction shows. So if you subscribe to YouTube, we appreciate that. You hit that notification bell. We'll have some reaction shows, or we'll have some specialty shows. And sometimes those shows will make their way to the radio airwaves. But the best way to stay in touch with everything is here on the YouTube and the social medias. And we enjoy also all of our radio listeners, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Monday through Friday.
Central Daylight Time.
Yes, if you're in San Antonio time.
Exactly.
Was that it? Just Himbenyama?
Yeah, that was the update there. He just subscribed. Himbayama is what it says here. Himbayama.
Himbenyama. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
Himbayama.
Cool. No, I appreciate all the interaction. Best way to get in touch with us is when we are live. LG.
He did ask, "Is this the LG from formerly Love You Hard TV?" And I said, "Yeah, that's me."
That's
me.
you. You're the one and only. You've been around here, and one of the things you do, I know you weren't there on Saturday night, but one of the things you also do is you're camera operator. You are the eyes for many people watching the broadcast from a certain angle for the SAFC games.
Exactly.
And Saturday SAFC. Couple weeks where they did not score in the run of play and reached full time without scoring a goal. One time it led into a PK shootout in the USL Open Cup, and then, the USL Cup. They came away with 2 points because they had a draw for 1 point, and then they won the PK for 2 points.
Yep, against the Birmingham Legion.
Yes, sir. I guess that was 2 weeks ago now, and or in terms of soccer time. And last week / the Saturday night game, SAFC found 3 goals in full time. It was a 3-3 draw against the Colorado Springs Switchback FC on Saturday night. And it was a really fun one, LG. I thought that if you're a soccer fan, maybe you'll get this. Open Cup is where the teams across the entire United States can play against each other in battle to the top. SAFC is already out of Open Cup. They won their first round matchup against some amateur team. You were actually doing that one. I didn't go to that one because it was on some other network.
I believe it was raining that day.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, they lost. They beat an amateur team, and then they lost to Tulsa FC in the second round. So they're no longer in the Open Cup. But it starts with like sort of a regional tournament before it gets to bigger teams. So SAFC played Austin FC one time in it, and that was a big rivalry match because finally they got to play despite being MLS and USL Championship. So this is back to USL Championship play where it matters in the standings and the eventual playoffs. This is the big main league for SAFC. They play the Colorado Springs Switchbacks. Switchbacks really determined the tempo in about the first 30 minutes of the game, and that forced Joey Batruni, the keeper, to make an errant pass, not very much like him. He's a young guy out of San Antonio, part of the academy program, and he led the USL Championship in clean sheets with 4, or at least he was second, and he just made an uncharacteristic pass where somebody forced him to make a quick pass, and it must have been part of the Colorado Springs game plan because they had a Japanese player strike first, Yosuke Hanya, and he just blindly passed it to him for the easiest goal Hanya probably has ever had in his career. And then SAFC had Jorge Hernandez score his first goal of the match less than 10 minutes later in the 34th minute. So Hanya scored in the 25th minute. Jorge Hernandez scores in the 34th minute. We're all level at 1 heading into halftime. And then each team scores a goal. Colorado Springs comes ahead with 1 goal in the start of the second half, and SAFC gets another goal score coming from Jorge Hernandez, assisted by Akimu Connor Ward in the 83rd minute. So this SAFC fans were sort of sweating it out. And then in the 83rd minute, they level it up. Then in stoppage time, 8 minutes into stoppage time, so there was 11 minutes of stoppage time in this one. Alex Crinali on a kind of rebound recycle shot just sends it past the keeper who had a great night, Christian Herrera for Colorado Springs. And Alex Cronali puts SAFC ahead 3-2. Then 2 minutes later, it was eventually ruled an own goal by an SAFC player. But one of the defenders, just off of a rebound, tried his hardest and kicked it really hard. And it looked like it was going to go across the end line for a goal kick. It ricochets off of a player trying to clear it right into the net. And 3-3 final score. Both teams get a point in the Western Conference standings. SAFC going into that match was second in the Western Conference, and they still have not lost at home at Toyota Field.
Despite the draw, they are still undefeated at Toyota Field.
Yep. I don't know where they are in the standings after that one, but the Switchbacks have never won at Toyota Field, and they, I think, it's like 14-6-7 now, the two teams in the all-time history. SAFC has the edge, and they've never lost in San Antonio. So that trend continues despite being down at the 83rd minute when Jorge Hernandez got his brace. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. SAFC, it's a lot of fun. You should guys go out there. That's why we commit a segment to them. I enjoy calling those games with Katie Goodman. She is the local soccer knowledge person here in town. We will get her for some World Cup stuff, talk a little more SAFC, and she will talk circles around me in soccer. I know the games that I called, but she actually knows soccer, and I want to get some other people involved in soccer too, but she's easily the biggest name in San Antonio soccer circles.
That'll be fun. And yeah, and if you've never been to an SAFC game, I highly recommend going out to it. It's a cheap ticket, affordable ticket. It's a 2-hour, matchup unless you got 11 minutes of stoppage time, but who cares? It's still a quick game, and it's just an all-around fun time. They got a great tailgate scene out there. And I need to get back out there. I'm sad that I missed this one.
So they're on the road for the next 2 weeks. Their next home game is going to be May 23rd against Sacramento Republic FC.
Oh, wow.
It's Pride Night, so the first 1,000 fans get rainbow-themed bucket hats. And that'll be a fun evening as they come back from being on the road for 2 straight weeks. The only thing that obviously throws a wrench into that for me is I hope that the Spurs are in the Western Conference Finals, but they're playing on the other side of that game. So like a Friday and a Sunday for the Spurs and probably the Thunder in that final matchup in the Western Conference playoffs for San Antonio.
Might be some overlap there.
I hope not, but there is a chance. And I think the furthest the Timberwolves series can go is May 17th. Hopefully the Spurs don't need that. 8:30 tip-off tonight, Game 1 between the Timberwolves and the Spurs here in San Antonio. The second round of the NBA playoffs gets going. Dan Weiss will be on the call. I get us started with Spurs Radio Game Night on AM 1200. Big Brother Down the Hall. That will be going at 8 o'clock. Dylan Emery gets us started with Spurs Countdown at 7:30 on WOAI. So be sure to tune in for all of your Spurs coverage here from iHeartMedia.
Yep, and I will be there working on the fan camera. I'll be walking around the Frostbank Center, putting the fans on the Jumbotron. So get ready, get your best kisses ready in case we bust out the kiss cam.
He'd be the man to do it. So flag him down if you have a date that you want to just kind of get that first. That's a great first date, But hey, if you're doing that,
it's an expensive first date.
Yeah, flag LG down. We'll talk about that and more tomorrow's edition of the Starting Lineup here on Ticket 760. Appreciate y'all joining us. I've been Carl Schoening. Dan Patrick up next here on the radio.